Hello and welcome to my art update podcast thingy. This is episode 30. Holy shit, 2 weeks to go! Just the usual safety warning here. After I clip the mic. The purpose of this podcast is to update people who know me, Andrew Woolner, about what's been going on creatively for me over the last week. Of course, some life updates get rolled into that too. So if you don't know me and you've never heard of me, and you're just general audience, go ahead and pop the pill, but side effects can include boredom. If this is your first update and you haven't been keeping up with me over the years, well, I suggest checking out update number 1. Makes sense, right? And hell, maybe update number 2 to bring yourself up to date on things before jumping back here. So we'll just start right in with the YTG Updates, Yokohama Theater Group Updates. Jekyll and Hyde Mainstage. As you heard from the title, holy fuck, it's 2 weeks to go. We are 2 weeks today from opening night. Yeah, that's going to be, that's nuts. That's nuts. I have less than, I would say, 20% of my section of the show made. And I'm freaking out. Yeah, what do I mean by my section? We'll come back to that in a second. We made big decisions in the last week. We did a lot of compromising. So rather than making hard choices, we've done a lot of, hey, why not both? Which I hope does not come back to bite us in the ass. We've split the show into 2 acts, which enables me to keep the sort of cyberpunk neo-Victorian thing that I was going for that I think is integral, and also keeping the sort of more direct link to the Jekyll and Hyde material, as Mike in the section that he's branched off and is directing, because he wasn't interested in the other stuff. He's not really connecting to it at all. He's focusing on the theme of revolution, and yeah, to the point where, like, you know, he doesn't even like the fact that the show is titled Jekyll and Hyde, but I feel like I've been marketing the show as Jekyll and Hyde for months and months and months, and we knew that was a source material we're working on. Anyway, having the 2-act structure means that one act is more closely linked, and I think that will sort of fulfill the implicit promise that we've made to the audience. So, yeah. We even, we've split the shows, and we were trying to decide on staging this week, like how we're going to set up the audience. We've been sort of working on a diagonal, but I think that was everybody's second choice. And so again, Mike and I had very strong opinions, and I'm starting to realize that we both have strong opinions, and I think I would have been willing to sort of compromise more on staging if I felt like every compromise that has been made, and we haven't said why not both, has sort of been away from the work that I'm creating. So yeah, it's this really weird. It's this sort of really weird position. So rather than doing a compromise where, like, I was definitely, the compromise was basically either we would both choose that we would go to the diagonal, which wasn't even my second pick. I actually preferred Mike's staging setup to the sort of diagonal that was sort of everybody else's second choice, and had been my suggestion originally. So I didn't want to, yeah. So like the compromise would have been doing that, which I felt for me, I was like, I've done a show. So, okay, so I should explain. So the 2 options were like what's called a traverse or an alley stage, where you have an audience on 2 sides and the main playing space is between them. So the audience are actually looking at each other, and then you might have little playing space on either on the 2 ends. And in our case, we would have this concrete wall that we can use for projection or whatever. And I felt that for me, for the composition that I was going for, that was, I could make it work, but it wasn't ideal. And that a lot of my, so the section Mike's working on doesn't have as much projection that sort of sets the scene, whereas mine does. And that means that the audience would you're doing some of that on the floor, so that's fine. But then if it's all on that one wall, that means the audience, particularly the ones at the end, don't have great sight lines to that, which means that some of the composition I've come up with wouldn't have worked. But also, I like the idea. I mean, like I said, I was I think that choice was better than the diagonal one that I'd come up with originally. So I would have been willing to adapt. But I preferred basically taking that alley structure and then angling it so it became like a V shape, so that the audience, so you have a playing space at one end, and that which juts into the audience, who are kind of almost facing each other, but are actually more positioned so they can see the wall that the projections are happening on. And then there's this little tiny space between where the V, comes to a point. There's an opening there that's big enough basically for one person to fit through. So that sort of, to my mind, it has several effects. One, I can do compositions using the projector and kind of make a few stage pictures like that. It means that if I put anyone at the point of that V, there's all this sort of like tension and energy directed towards that. And it's very easy to like throw focus to that side. And it's, of course, it's a setup I've never worked with. I think I've worked with a thrust stage, but not like the sort of extreme pointed thrust, and I really wanted to try that. And I really felt that I felt that it was a good setup, and it was, like I said, very easy to direct attention to different points on the stage. You have the option of doing kind of a flat composition, but then it can come out. You have this thing where if you put somebody at the tip of the V, there's this huge amount of sort of pressure. If a scene moves towards the V, you have the sense of everything sort of being squeezed to a point, which I thought was really interesting, because we're talking about revolution and the conditions for revolution. And so, part of it is this sort of pressure. So anyway, that's those were the two things. And we couldn't really come to there's no way to sort of, we couldn't really come to a compromise between them. The compromise setup was something that, for me, was not even my second choice. I would have preferred the traverse, and but so we went with that. Sorry, this is a very long rambling section. I didn't write this out very well. So we did that to, again, avoid having consensus. So what we're going to do is at intermission, we're actually going to we're going to ask the audience to get off, and we're going to change the angle on the risers. If there were just chairs on the floor, it wouldn't be so bad, but we want risers, because without some height, we got audience members who won't be able to see. We have action that takes place on the floor, and the sightlines for that would be horrible. Anyway, woo! Okay, so, And again, I really hope this, not avoiding consensus by always saying, why not both? It does not come back to bite us, because it is creating, in some ways, it creates extra work. There's less pressure to make a long show for each section, but they're definitely... That basically means split costume design, which means double the number of costumes. And we don't have a wardrobe person really on this show, which is unusual for the last couple of years. We've always had someone sort of on site working on that. So the closest thing we have to kind of a costume person is the very gifted Sarah, but she's got a toddler, so she's not actually on site with us. So a lot of it's just sort of her coming up with inspiration and maybe helping to coordinate that. So, okay. Woo. What else? I listened to an audiobook of the Communist Manifesto last week, because I thought that would help inspire me, and it did. Although I was surprised about how much of the Communist Manifesto is just kvetching about other types of socialist ideas, and why they're bad. And I was like, I thought this would just be a lot more about like just, communism and why it's good. But anyway, it was an interesting read, and definitely like the last few lines, the workers of the world unite part, the proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains, is sort of, it works very well for the show. Right. God. So I got a lot of scenes I've got to make last week. As I said, I think I've only got 30% of my section done. And I still have to figure out some dramaturgical things, like how the scenes flow. Next week, we're not in the theater space at all. We only have studio for rehearsals, which means we can't work with projections. We can't work with any kind of setup. So that's kind of stressful. I'm starting to feel the stress. 2 weeks and the show being in the state it's in, I'm starting to feel the stress. This is totally normal, though. But yeah, I am not looking forward to my blood pressure readings for the next 2 weeks. Okay, just moving on. Nerd Night. I'm not thinking about Nerd Night until after this show is done. Our next show is in September for that. Podcast. Have nothing. There's probably something I'm forgetting. Just some brief life updates here. I'm going to do, I got to go do the paperwork for Hammy's Japanese passport today because there was, my wife went to do it yesterday and he had to sign it because he's school age now, so he has to do the signature. So now he's done that. I've got to run the papers in today and submit that. Yes. But then after that, we're off to the new Spider-Verse movie. And I say new, but it is actually leaving the theaters this weekend. I only found one showing of it in the entire prefecture that is in English. So we're going to go see that this evening. And then I'm going to run back and try to get to bed as early as possible because I've got a paid job tomorrow doing live streaming for a pole dance show, for like a pole dancing school. And that's like a 10 to 10 day with my good friend Roger. And then Sunday, I've got to try to fit in The Whale with the play, not the film, because that's the only, if I can make it at all, that 2:00 matinee on Sunday is the only time I can go. And then I will, but only if I have to find out what the running time is because I have to leave by 4:00 in order to make it all the way across town for the premiere of Doctor Who's new film, Spoiled Identity, which I feel like I need to go to because I worked on that film. I helped with providing them space and some other technical lighting stuff. So I do feel like I need to go to that film premiere. So if I can fit those both in, I will do those both. I am going to try to finagle a comp for The Whale because it's so expensive for me to travel, just to travel to that end of town because it's in Nakano. So like the round trip and that is not cheap. And the tickets aren't outrageously priced like some of the tickets in Tokyo. They're like 3,000 yen, but that's still that's ouch right now. Especially in the lead up to a show where I'm counting every yen because I know there will be unexpected expenses in the next 2 weeks that I have not planned for, and I need to make sure I have money for those. That's it. And of course, these two things are on opposite sides of Tokyo. If they were next to each other, that would be perfect. But I think that's it. I think that's it for now. I gotta record. I gotta finish. I gotta stop stuttering. I gotta finish this recording, and get this posted, and then head out to the passport office. So, have a great week. That's all for now. Andrew out.